Hello, I'm Dave Fisher. I thought I would record a video here of one of our small group Bible study meetings. We're going over John chapter 11. Just to kind of give you a little background on who we are, what we do. There's a website here. I'll just go to it. I just made this for the students in there. So it's a website of how we're going through John. We're just doing chapter by chapter, one chapter per week. Where we happen to be at is we happen to be at John chapter 11. So this is where we're going. So if you ever want to see the slides, you can go to walk-through-john.web.app, and you can always see the slides. So here's the slide deck that we're doing today. Cool. And so what we're doing is we're diving into chapter 11, where we start with kind of a reminder of why the book of John exists, why John wrote it. These are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. He also acknowledges that many other things are written, but these are written for this purpose. So we always kind of put the purpose at the beginning. So where are we at? We are in chapter 11, raising Lazarus. This is one of two chapters at Bethany that happen in Bethany. We always show this just to kind of get our bearings of where we're at. So let's go ahead and get our bearings. We started with the prologue, those first 18 verses, the poem at the beginning. After that, we started with the first major movement, chapters 1 through 4, all about the model of discipleship and the examples that are kind of put before us, the case studies through different institutions. Of course, we saw the wedding, the temple, the well, the Jewish teaching with Nicodemus, things like that. After that, we got into the different festivals. So we saw Sabbath, Passover, Tabernacles, and Hanukkah. And really, that's kind of the trial period where Jesus is teaching in Jerusalem. And some people step into the light, and some people drive farther into the darkness. And so there's just all these themes are just repeated so well in John. So now we find ourselves in chapter 11. Chapter 11 is a significant shift. Jesus has finished his public ministry. He's done all he can in Jerusalem. And now he's going to be spending time with believers. So villages at Bethany, where there's a high concentration of believers. And then soon it will be just the upper room discourse things. So chapter 11 and 12 are kind of the middle of the book. So you can see how it kind of breaks into 7 chunks. We've also kind of seen building up to this that it always talks about my hour has not yet come, the hour has not yet come. Just spoiler, chapter 12 is going to say the hour has come, right? And so this is kind of our last the hour. The Bible Project poster, of course, puts this smack in the middle, the halfway point of the literary design of the book. And so it's the big transition before we get into the final Passover and his final words. Also, if you break it up into 7, you can see that it's the fourth of the 7 sections. So that's where we're at. No surprise there. Chronologically, where are we at? And so we've talked about tabernacles being, I don't know, roughly 177 to 207 days out. Potentially stayed at Jerusalem the whole time up through Hanukkah. And then at chapter 10, he left. He leaves, right? So you can read the end of chapter 10 again. Heads beyond the Jordan to where John was first baptizing. And so chapter 11, we don't know when it happened exactly, but we do know that chapter 12 says it was 6 days before Passover. So chapter 12 is clearly the mark of Passover. Chapter 10 is clearly the end of Hanukkah. So it's somewhere in this 3-month span. Honestly, the guess is after chapter 11, he's going to go to Ephraim, which is a nearby village. So probably of the 3-month span, we can even say even more accurate, it's probably near the end. So it's probably in like Adar, right? So it's like sometime around Purim time. So that's where we're at chronologically. So pretty close. Like when we're talking about like 30, 50 days out from when the Passover would have happened. 50 is probably my guess, right? So it's kind of neat. One thing I wanted to do today is try to be a little less deliverer of facts and a little bit more of a teacher. So I'm a college teacher and I review people's promotion portfolios. And I got permission to use this, but one of the ones I did was Muhammad. He's a friend of mine. And something he wrote in his teaching philosophy, I put it into this fancy quote. I'll just read the start. You can read the whole thing if you want. As a teacher, I strive to be a facilitator of learning rather than a deliverer of facts. And he goes on to expand that role. But my goal as a teacher should not be to tell you all the things that I discovered, right? My goal as a teacher should be to get you the skills to where you can do research and make discoveries and things like that. And so to go in that path, we're going to do a worksheet to start off. So there's a link here to a worksheet. I'll make sure to put it down below. You're supposed to print the worksheet. I printed them for all the people in our study group. And then we're going to do the worksheet together using an app to help us. The app that we're going to use this time is called Literal Word. There's a lot of apps out there. This is actually the app that I use the most. It's my own personal Bible. Let me go ahead and bring up my version of Android here. And so if I look at Literal Word, it will open up. It'll kind of look like this if it's your first time using it. So you can download it on either iOS or Android. One of the things you need to know is that you can tap this button and bring up the side menu. And then you can scroll through the books. There's some settings, whether you want like a single view or you want a side-by-side view, however you want to do it is fine. But get yourself to John chapter 11. And you can just go to verse 1, that's fine. Cool, and so the thing about this app that I want to show you is that you can bring up a concordance digitally with it. There's a lot of tools like this. This is just a really well-made, relatively simple one. By the way, this tool, which is amazing, is really just made by like two guys, right? And you can actually email them, which is kind of fun, and they respond. I've emailed them because I'm a big dork like that. And they've even like put in some features and things that I want. So I just think it's amazing. There's 4 translations that they've made available to you. King James, if you're a King James guy, I'm really not. NSB 95, this is their original thing that they launched with. NASB, New American Standard Bible, had a huge update in 95, just a tremendous version. And that's what started Literal Word. That's kind of their original translation. They've added a few more since then. They've added ESV, which I know is very popular. It's a very word-for-word translation, but with easily understandable words that we use in our culture today. And then LSB. LSB, it's kind of like NASB 20. There is an NASB 20, which I actually really, really like. Then there's also an LSB version, which is a little bit more internationalized. It gets rid of the word American, right? So it's a little bit more globally friendly. So LSB is very good. So you can set your version to the one that you prefer. Usually I use NSB 95 just because I'm so familiar with it. But today maybe I'll try to get better at using LSB. All right, so let's hop over to the worksheet. Also, I think I'm going to quit showing my face just because you don't really need to see me. So hop over to the worksheet. If you can, go ahead and print it out, and we'll pick up there. All right, so let's go ahead and try to get more familiar with this Literal World app and just get better at using Bible tools. And so this worksheet is going to show you how to use a couple of the things in the tool. And we're just going to look at chapter 11. And so the first thing you need to know about this app is where it's got the little alpha up here. You can click on that. And then if you watch the words closely, they all got these little underlines on them. And so you can click on each word and it'll tell you about it. And kind of as an example, let's just use the very first word because you can actually get information even on simple words like the word now. So if you click on the word now, you'll notice that it pops up information about this word, which is just amazing, right? If you think about what people have had to do for years. And so it's a Greek word. Apparently it transliterates to D, a very, very short word, pretty insignificant. One thing about this tool is they only show you the more significant words. So you notice every word is not underlined, but this word now is underlined, which is kind of convenient. What you can do is you can look at the definition, which is fun to read the definitions. I think some of their definitions could be a little bit more thorough, but that's okay. It's something. By the way, they're also showing you the root word here. This is kind of an overshare. The root word is the word D. If you want to actually know what the word that's specifically used here is, you're going to have to use some other tool. So here's what I want to do. I want you to look through to see when this word was used earlier in the Gospel of John. And so you can see that this word in LSB, they think that it considers it occurring 376 times, which is a lot. If you want to see how many times it appeared in John, you have to click on Gospels and Acts there, and it'll show you a breakdown. And you can see that in the LSB version, at least, they consider it to have occurred 44 times in the book of John. And so what I've done here on the sheet of paper is I've went ahead and printed out what you should have found here. And you should have found that it happens in John 1:44. And so it says, now Philip was from Bethsaida, right? And so you can see that it's used in some way there. And then on 2:6 and 2:8, it should just match up with what you see on your sheet of paper. And so I know that here I've printed them out. And so, well, why do I need the app if you print them out? But the idea is that you can use the app to look things up. And so what I wanted you to do is I wanted you to pause the video and do this task for me. The first task is just count usages. So in the first 10 chapters, how many times was the word now used? So you can count them on your paper or using the app. And then on average, how many times was it used? It's easy because once you count them, you just divide it by 10 and that's your average, right? So no big deal there. And then count how many times it was used in chapter 11. And what I'm hoping you'll notice is that on average, it's used quite a bit more in chapter 11. And so that's the first observation. The next observation I'd like for you to make with this tool is you'll notice that it shows you a little snippet of each of these words. By the way, in order to get the words here, I used another tool. This one is Bible Web App. I'm not going to show you this one in great detail. But this tool lets you do things like show all the occurrences. And so this screenshot actually came from this tool. But getting good at these tools, man, you can learn so much greater depth if you spend some time with your tools. All right, so the other thing I want to say is this word now, it's used in Greek very much like how we use it in English. It can be used literally as a time marker, like to mean now the next thing that happened was, and so it's like a divider or a time marker. That's the literal meaning. And then it can also be used as an idiom. And the idiom means something a little different. It means kind of like, now let me explain this to you. Or now it's important you know. And so what I wanted you to do just to practice is using either this tool, go through and mark each one whether it was used literally or as an idiom. Just put a little L or I on each one. All right, so those are your two tasks. Figure out the averages in 1 through 10 versus 11, and figure out whether it's an idiom or literally used. I'll pause the video and go ahead and do that. All right, I'll assume that you have. So what you should have found, I think there were something like 16 usages in the first 10 chapters. So 1.6 was the average. And so more than one per chapter, but less than 2, right? So that's kind of where we're at on that. Whereas in chapter 11, I think it was 10 times. So, I mean, that's like, yikes. That's like suddenly we're using this word 7 times as much, which is another fun biblical number. No, we won't go into that. And the other question is it used mainly literally, or is it used mainly just to explain something? And there's a few literals, like now, it was the time for the Passover, right? So I would say that's a time marker, is what I guess. But most of them are idioms, right? Now Bethany was near Jerusalem. Obviously, Bethany didn't move. It didn't just suddenly become near Jerusalem. And so it's just used as an explanation. And so the question is, why did the author do it this way, right? Why have so many nows all of a sudden? And, you can come to different conclusions. There's no right answer, but it's just fun to meditate on and think about. And I think that there's a few things that it's just important that you understand correctly. You could also argue that it suggests that different authors were helping in this area. So I don't stand behind one author doing everything in a cave. I think they worked in community. So different people may have helped in this section, and it resulted in a slightly different writing style, which is really interesting. All right, so that was honestly just to kind of get used to the app and play some games. The next thing I want you to do is to do this next question on Bethany. So he was from Bethany, so this is also in verse 1. And what I want you to do is I want you to use a literal word to tell me this word Bethany. Where else was it used in John, and why might that be significant? So take a minute, pause the video, find the other usage, and then we're going to talk about frames. Cool. So I'll trust you did that. So very easy task. You click on the word Bethany, right? Bethany, it says it was used 12 times, which is great. It was used in all the Gospels. So all the Gospels used this word Bethany. John used it 4 times. Twice in chapter 11, we can see, and once in chapter 12, so the very start of chapter 12. And the one that's the most interesting to me and most people is this first one. So by being mentioned in chapter 1 and chapters 11 and 12, it kind of ties a ribbon around this section. So from 1, it connects 1 to 12. And so they didn't use chapter breaks, and so they would use key words to frame sections. And so this frames the sections 1 through 12. Now, the thing that's most interesting about this word, Bethany, in chapter 1, you probably already know this, it doesn't make any chronological, geographical sense. I just meant geographical. Because it says, these things happen in Bethany, beyond the Jordan. So Bethany was a suburb of Jerusalem, right? It's 2 miles from Jerusalem, 15 stadia, if you want to say that. It's super close to Jerusalem. It is not beyond the Jordan. So like this, the statement is just, I don't want to say wrong, but it's weird because it doesn't make sense. So John probably just misspelled a word intentionally to make this frame, which is just fun, right? And the most common explanation, I'll just kind of go to it here in the slides. The most common explanation is that John deliberately misspelled the word Bethany, right? So the region that was beyond the Jordan, that was near Galilee, was Bethany. Different people pronounce it different. I've seen a couple things. And most historians believe that, yeah, he just deliberately misspelled the word Bethany because this region, there would have been a scattering of Jews over here, but mainly Greeks that he most likely went to. He spelled it different to make this frame. I just think that's neat. By the way, I'm almost certain he did the same thing with the word Bethesda and Bethsaida, which is just kind of interesting. So Philip, or just kind of sneak and look at this one. Philip was from Bethesda, which you'll notice John mentions in chapter 1 and chapter 12. So same game. So there's another frame coming. But then also in chapter 5, John also links it in there because this person was at the pool of Bethesda. And so I predict that John also misspelled one of these. But these were too famous to actually let John get away with this trick. But John does this a couple times. He also switched who the father of Peter was. I don't know if you noticed that one. That was way back in chapter 1 as well. But he switched his dad, which is so funny. And so Simon, son of John, his dad's name was Jonah, right? So the dove. And so John switched it to the word John, suggesting the family of God and how he actually is like a descendant of John in the family of God. So it's just so interesting, all these little words. We'll do just a couple more, and then we'll get into the meat of things. Flip the page, and I've got another table for you. All right, so using the app again, so you can go back to chapter 11. There's 3 times where it says that the Lord loves someone. The first one is in chapter 3, so I'm just kind of letting you. Oops, I got to clear that off sometimes. The first one is in chapter verse 3. It's the word love here. And what I want you to do is I want you to pause the video, and I want you to tell me who said it. So like who made the statement about, and they said it about Jesus loving whom. So somebody said it, and they said Jesus loved someone. And then the thing I'm curious about is, did they use the word agape or the word phileo? And so in the slides, we talk about different people have kind of like interpreted these words differently. They do roughly mean the same thing. They both mean love. That's a true statement. But agape is a more significant, unselfish, devotional love. And then phileo is a little lighter, right? So a little lighter love. So go through the worksheet. Tell me who said it, who they said it about, whether it was an A or a P, and then, I don't know, any meaning that you could kind of derive out of that. So take a minute, fill out the table. I'll pause, or go ahead and pause the video, and I'll let you do that. All right, so I'll come through and do it here. I won't bother write it in, but I'll just kind of do it. So the first one is from the sisters. So it's said by Mary and Martha. It was said about Lazarus, and so they were talking about Lazarus. And they use the word phileo. And so it is the word love, but it kind of is a lighter version of love, right? So the definition in this app is love of emotion of friendship, admire. So it's kind of a lighter version of love. Flip over to 5, and what you should have found in 5 is that it says loved again in English, because we've only got one word, and we don't have a variety of levels of love. And it says, now Jesus loved Martha, her sister, and Lazarus. So it was said by the author, right? So it's said by John, I guess you could say, or you could just say the evangelist, whoever wrote this book. Not an argument I want to have right now. He said it about Mary, Martha, Lazarus, so all three. And interestingly, if you read it really carefully, it actually says the name Martha, and then it says her sister. It doesn't say Mary, it just says her sister and Lazarus. Little details like that may not matter at all. I give you that. But I would argue that the reason it doesn't say Mary here is very similar to the reason it doesn't say Mary in chapter 2. So chapter 2 it says Jesus' mother everywhere. It never says her name, never says her personal name, kind of like you wouldn't say the personal name Yahweh. Hopefully I didn't offend anyone there. But it doesn't say her name. And so why doesn't chapter 2 say Mary's name? I think it's because she had something to do with the writing process, right? Either she provided the original story, or she edited, or she reviewed it, or they showed it to her. And as kind of out of respect, they would choose not to put their own names in things. You'll see that John doesn't put his name in this as well. And so I think it's really neat that this is not only an eyewitness testimony from John, but we have information about who the other eyewitnesses are. And so I think that this story is reviewed by or provided by or somehow from Mary, which I think is just cool. It's so neat. Anyway, that was not the point of what I was going on down here. So Jesus, like the truth, is that he agape them, right? He loved them unconditionally. He didn't just phileo them, he agape them. We also see our word now here, right? And so the author is wanting to talk to us. It's like he's whispering to you. It happens all the time in John, where it's just like, now, you got to know this. Tim Mackey does this better than me. Jesus, he agape them, right? He didn't just phileo them. And so that's kind of the true state of things. And then the last one, I'll just make this one quick. So verse 36, this is the Jews talking. You can see that there. Interestingly enough, the word Jews is used differently in chapter 11. It no longer is referring to like an adversarial group. It's now referring to believers, right? So people that believe in Christ. And so it's definitely a change in tone towards the word Jews. And so the Jews say phileo again. So you can see how everybody's saying phileo, except for the truth is the agape. Cool, we'll kind of keep going here. So the next one is we see the use of the word glory quite a bit in chapter 11. This will be the last one. I know it gets a little hard for my group today as well. It's like you start to kind of lose your energy. So we see the word glory, and then we see the word glorified, right? And so they're kind of different words, but they're related. So glorified is doxazo. I can't pronounce Greek, right? And then glory is doxa, right? And so no doubt they're related, but one is the doing of glorification, the other is the evidence, like the glory itself, right? And so we have a problem in our churches and in the world today that Bible words lose all their meaning after a while. And so this phrase here, God's glory, is significant. By the way, you can also compare this line to what we heard in chapter 9 about how it's not about the sickness being a bad thing, but in chapter 9 it was so God's works might be displayed. And so this time what we're going to see in this death is we're going to see God's glory and that the Son might be glorified through it. So glory and glorified. And so what our goal is to reclaim this word glory. What's this word glory mean? So what I want you to do is I want you to try to put a definition in the gray box, which is kind of hard to do. To help you out a little bit, I've listed a couple other usages of glory. I don't know if this will help you any, but glory is a huge theme in John. We see it in the prologue. They drop all these soccer balls into the field. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son. And then, did I not tell you that if you believed, you'd see the glory of God? And so what is this glory? So you can read, these are the usages of the word glory that we've seen so far. But see if you can kind of come up with a definition of what you kind of think glory means. Cool. All right. So I'll kind of dive in with you. The first thing that you should try not to do is don't look up the English word glory. It does actually normally work, but it's a dangerous game. Because really, if you look up the word glory, if you do a Google search for define glory, what you're really looking at is the semantic range of the English word, which can sometimes be different from the semantic range that the original language used, doxa and doxazo, right? And so if you try to make some effort of looking up the original word, one is that you can look in here. You can see that they define this as to think or suppose or hold an opinion. And so you can see how it's also used in the Septuagint, which is really neat, right? So the Septuagint was the Old Testament written in Greek, so how they use it in the Old Testament can inform things. And then I'm not worried. I'm going to also kind of look up glory here. So this is like a judgment or an opinion about the reputation that somebody could be held in. Like, should you be praising and honoring them? And so it's really fun to try to look up these words. There's different ways that you can do it, by the way. I'll skip over this. We're going to see this agape phileo in chapter 21. That'll be really fun. One trick that you can use is, of course, different resources on the internet. One is you can figure out how to pronounce it.
Doxazo.
Doxazo. All right, so that was better than how I said it. You can also look up words in, this is Blue Letter Bible. They've also got an app, which is fun. Here I'm looking up the 392. So I'm looking up either glorify or glorification. They're similar. There's 390, 1391, 1392. And you can see how it gets translated: honor, magnify, make glorious, which is neat. The usages of it are also really, really cool. Honor, praise, dignity, worship. So you can read their definitions, which are good. And then one of the best things is just to look at, how it gets used in different places, including the Old Testament. If you were to do one of their really deep dives, you can figure out what Septuagint words translated to this as well, and that gets really fun. And so there's many words that are used for glory in the Old Testament. One of the main ones, the one that I wanted to highlight, is the word kavod. So kavod is a word that means glory. You see it in a lot of places. I don't know why the one that just came to my mind is in Psalms. I think it was 113, verse 4 has one. And so if we look at his glory, and it's nice that in English we translate them both as glory. His kavod, his splendor, his dignity, his reputation, his honor. And so kavod is a physical manifestation that you can see about somebody. And so what I did with the group, this was kind of fun. I went in and I printed up these little certificates for them, which was kind of silly. So I'll just kind of show you this just because I thought it was good. And so these certificates that I printed up, I let them know that this was their kavod. So I printed up just 5 of them. There were actually a few more people there than that. But I gave them a certificate and I said, this is now part of your kavod. So people can look to this and they can see that this is physical evidence that describes your reputation and your character. And so people could look at this sheet of paper, this part of your kavod, and decide that you are worthy of honor or praise. Probably that sheet of paper is not enough. But what it says here is it says that, here's our main passage, that this death is going to be for God's glory. So this is going to increase the evidence that we have about God so that we can know that he's worthy of praise, right? And the Son may be glorified through it. And so this is going to be evidence that the Son is being glorified by God. And so that's going to increase his glory. So that should be, your opinion should be higher because of this story of who Jesus was. And so I would define glory as like, so glory itself is like evidence that establishes the representation, like visible evidence that establishes a reputation. And to give glory is to behave in a way to where you acknowledge that truth, right? So you can worship God. That's a way you can give glory to God. And so the Son's going to increase his reputation through this thing. By the way, there's just so many tools that you can use. I won't go on all this, but you can also, if you're a Python developer, you can make scripts and things that do things. So that's what that was all about. All right, so kind of got off the beaten path a little bit there with that, but it was fun. That was a chance for you to get better with tools, specifically literal word this week, to try to understand how you can dig deeper. Let's kind of go through a couple other things. We'll try to not keep you here all day, but I'll point some things to where you can do some work on your own. So coming back to where chapter 11 comes from, chapter 11 follows chapter 10. Chapter 10 finishes with him leaving Jerusalem. So he leaves the people to their own devices. I don't want to say turns his back on them, but he's done what he can do, right? And so he's, some people try to seize him, and some believe. And so everywhere he goes, you see this pattern of some people step into the light and draw closer, and some people have the same physical experience and retreat farther into the darkness. And so we're going to see that kind of come to its conclusion at the end of chapter 11. The Sanhedrin's going to decide resolutely that it's time to declare war. There's no more debates or court cases. They're going to kill him, right? So that's kind of what happens at the end here. You see so much in John chapter 11. There's so many details here. We see the final sign in the book of signs, the sign number 7. So that's, of course, the central focus. We see people's reaction to this death and even Jesus weeping. We see inversions again. So chapter 9 had some inversions. So in chapter 9, Jesus sent a man, and then that man made I am statements, and that man had divisions, and then that man got kicked out of the synagogues, right? And here we also see inversions. In this one, we see that Jesus stays. So he gets the news and he stays for 2 more days. This word stays, it's based on the word minnow, to stay. And it's a huge theme in John, from the Holy Spirit coming on Jesus and staying, to he's going to go prepare a place for us. He's going to prepare a place for us to stay. In chapter 1, they went to saw where Jesus was staying. So Jesus is doing the staying. He's staying there for 2 days, just like he did in chapter 4. He stayed with the people for 2 days. People are going to come to Jesus, and they're going to say the words to Jesus, "Come and see," right? Which, of course, Jesus said in chapter 1 to disciples, "Come and see." And then Philip said to Nathanael, "Come and see." And the woman in chapter 4 said to the townspeople, "Come and see." And so we're going to see people say to Jesus, "Come and see where he's buried." And so also at the beginning, the word from the sisters comes to Jesus. So there's all these Old Testament books where, like, the word of the Lord came to Jonah, or the word of the Lord came to, but here the word comes to Jesus. So the author is so clever. Like, there's so many layers to John. It's amazing. But we see these inversions happening again, where it's not about Jesus, it's about us, which is cool. Details about Jesus' love. I am statements. We get our 5th of the 7 I am statements here. It's a big one. I am the resurrection and the life, right? And we see the final resolution of the opposers of Jesus, kind of a sneak peek into HQ, which presumably is from Nicodemus. It's hard to know how John got that story, but it's really interesting. Huge chapter. We also see kind of like our energy level increase. We see like just more detailed depth things as we continue to move through John. For example, we see a characteristic of God. So from Exodus 34:6, you see kind of the 5 characteristics of God. The first one being compassion. We're going to see here how Christ is compassionate. Lots of more words on this slide. But Jesus shows compassion very well in this chapter. We see things like, they're little, right? So like, Lord, the one you love is sick. And so the sisters, Mary and Martha, they appeal to Jesus to heal Lazarus, not because of what Lazarus has done, not because of the work that he's done for the kingdom. They don't say this great leader in our community is sick. They think that the reason that Lazarus should be saved, like they're asking Jesus to come and save his life, right? Same as Mary said, oh, by the way, they have no more wine, right? She was asking, so it's a prayer request, right? And the basis is the one you love is sick, which goes very well with the fact that we are saved by faith through grace, not by work. So it has nothing to do, like our resurrection has nothing to do with what we do. It's because of the one who loves us, inviting us, and us choosing to follow, right? So some deep things there, just with a couple words, right? We also see some deeper things with I am the resurrection and the life, and some deeper things about the different levels of believing. So we're going to see Martha believes, like right off the go, obviously she believes, and then she's asked if she believes, and then whenever the stone comes off the grave, she instinctively says, whoa, right? And so like we see these different levels of belief. So let's talk about some of these words. Let's talk about the word resurrection and believe before we watch a video here. Resurrection is a really interesting word because it surprises some people depending on their church background. So for example, I teach 8th grade guys, and so in 8th grade guys, we said how Jesus isn't going to make Lazarus wait for the resurrection. He's going to do it now, right? And I had one of my 8th grade guys who I just absolutely love, kind of like, well, like, wait, like what? What do you mean? Like, resurrected now doesn't have to wait. So like, he's going to go to heaven early? And like, I was like, this inside grin, right? Of, no, he's not going to go to heaven early. He's going to be resurrected early. And so, Genesis 1 talks about creation being very good, right? And the story of the Bible is very much a story of heaven and earth being reunited. The Bible Project has amazing resources. They've got a book about it. It's like When Heaven Meets Earth that you can go read. But the story of the Bible is very much about heaven coming to earth. The Lord's Prayer, like our Father who art in heaven, holy be thy name. Thy kingdom come, right? And so it's very much important that you realize that the story of the Bible is about resurrection, redemption, making things new. And so what happens when we die? We don't know the details. We haven't been there. But the Bible does make it clear that it's about heaven coming to us and resurrection. So things will be different, right? Can't say that clearly enough. Things will be different. Jesus, for example, he shows up in a room where all the doors are locked, and another time people don't recognize him, but they do recognize him because he still has his scars in his hands and his side, right? And so there's going to be continuity, but there's definitely going to be things that you can recognize from the old. So the seed of things were here. So just wanted to point out that we talk about heaven as like this misty cloud where we're going to worship God all the time. That's not what the Bible says, right? So I just kind of wanted to point out the elephant in the room there. Often underpreached is physical resurrection. So I just thought I'd harp on that a little. The other word that I wanted to point out is the word believe, which in John he writes pistuo. Paul would usually write it as pistis, which is a different word slightly, but they basically mean the same thing. So this word pistuo, I can't pronounce things, is almost always translated as believe, right? Believe, 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 believe. And so what does it mean to believe? And so I feel bad. I feel like the word believe really cheapens the semantic range of this word, right? So to me, I believe that 2 + 2 is 4. I believe that a pencil falls to the ground because of gravity, right? And that's one level of belief, right? You think that something's true. but pisteuo has a wider range than that. And so, for example, if you look at the different ways it's translated, it's in John almost always translated as believe. Sometimes it's translated as have faith in. Mainly that's Paul's version is have faith in. Committed to, or what I really like is put your trust in, right? So these two words, I consider them to be really the same word. And I can kind of see levels in the word believe, and you can see that in the translation. So pisteuo means at its highest level that you think something's true, right? And in this case, we're almost always talking about things like Jesus is one with God. Jesus died. He was raised on the third day. Jesus reveals God. God loves us. He wants to partner with us, which is crazy. He made us in his likeness, and it was very good, right? So I believe that those things are true. Famously, James 2:19 wrote, even the demons believe that, right? I think that's not really to your credit. Great, you know facts, super. And so believe is the first layer. Kind of going a little deeper, have faith in. Have faith in is really a decision that's a personal choice, right? So it's a true fact, and it personally applies to me. And so this is where the demons are out, right? I am a child of God. I will be with Christ. This applies to me. And having faith is wildly significant. And you're gonna carry on is kind of the idea of faith. But you can go deeper, right? So it also means like to commit to something, right? So to commit to is to believe, to pisteuo, and to live out your faith. Now, I'm not saying you have to go be a pastor. That's not what you don't have to go be a missionary. You just have to live in a way that somebody who's part of the kingdom would live, right? So you have to gather fruits for eternal life, as John 4 put it. And you can start doing this already. You don't have to wait until you're in heaven, right? So in the new creation. And so you just have to be nice to people. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, right? And so if you commit to this belief, it changes the way you act. And then the deepest level, which we kind of see here, is trust. Trust is usually thrust upon you. In this world, we'll have trouble. It's when it's no longer theoretical, right? So we are going to die. We're all going to die. It's going to happen. We're going to have loved ones die. We're going to have injuries that don't make sense. And this is where trust is really the best definition. And so won't belabor the point. I think that we'll all experience this point. But that's where the rubber hits the road in trust. And we'll see with Martha in this chapter that whenever they roll the stone away, like her instinctive reaction is to like, whoa! And we want to get to the point where our instinctive reaction is like, let's do this, right? So it's just kind of fun. Oh, silly example. I went to the dentist today, so this is me. Sorry, I'm so balding. But I had to have a cavity filled. Side of my face is still a little numb right now. But, I had to believe that this guy, this is my dentist, Dr. Finley, I had to believe that he could fix cavities, right? I had to have faith that he could fix my cavities. And so I decided that he did. And so I committed myself to that belief. I made appointments with him to get it looked at, and an appointment with him to go get it filled. But even after all that, I still had to have trust in him. I had to lay down in the chair and let him numb the side of my face and come at me with this variety of tools. It was no longer theoretical. I was never scared at the time. I'm just saying that it's a funny way to think about different levels of belief. We'll see that in chapter 11 today. So there's a handout, which we're not going to go over in this video, but I'll point you to it. You should go through and read it. And so the handout is NIV, and then it's also got questions along the way that you can try to answer using the app here. You can read it. You can read my little comments with it. You don't have to. It looks like I went off the page on that one. I'll have to fix that. And you can try to go a little bit deeper. And so hopefully some of the questions will inspire you to go a little deeper. And as you get in the habit of using apps like this, I'm looking at words in detail, like you'll see words and just like you'll have so many thoughts go off in your head that it's really fun about how you can go deeper with these 4 pages. The other thing that I recommend you do is I recommend that you watch at least one theatrical production of John. There's 2 links that I put into the slides here. Link 1 is the actor's talk version. It's a little less historically accurate, but it's really fun to see people deliver these lines. And so that's a version that I enjoy quite often. Option 2 is the Lumo Project version of John. It's a little bit more historically accurate, which is fun. The actors are all like Middle Eastern people. The only thing that surprised me at all in this version, I'll mention it, is I was surprised by Martha's character whenever she greeted Jesus. The Bible doesn't tell you exactly the tone she said something in, but the director of this version, the Lumo Project, decided that Martha was overwhelmed and angry, right? And so she comes out yelling at Jesus, like swinging, right? Like, if you'd been here, he wouldn't have died. And so that surprised me, but I don't consider their interpretation wrong. I'll just kind of mention that it surprised me, just because I kind of envisioned it a little bit different. Like she was sad in my mind that they just missed. Like, so close. It's kind of the way I saw it, more than angry. So, all right. So you've got some things to go and do. Watch one video or the other, or both, if you want to be really crazy, and go through and read chapter 11. Think about it more in depth. And I appreciate you taking the time to watch the video. Hopefully you can really use it to improve your faith. See you next time. Bye.